As draft season continues to roll on, we take another look at a quarterback that the Raiders could have interest in. That plus a whole lot more on Thursday's edition of the Locked On Raiders podcast for April 3rd, 2025.
You are Locked On Raiders, your daily Las Vegas Raiders podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And welcome in, Raider Nation, to another edition of the Locked On Raiders podcast. Thank you so much for making the show your first listen of the day. We definitely appreciate you. If you're catching the show wherever you find your favorite podcast or you're checking us out by way of the YouTube page, you know we appreciate that. The show continues to grow each and every day, and that's because of your support. You check in on the daily, and we appreciate that. Also want to shout out my man Ari, who does a great job behind the scenes on the YouTube page, making sure we're looking good and sounding good on the daily. Takes a lot of pride in his work, and we definitely appreciate that. At Ari Produces, if you want to hit him up on Twitter, shout him out and share your appreciation, it is all good. You can hit me up on Twitter as well, at your boy Q254. And if you want to be a part of the show, 707-654-4693, Locked On Raider Podcast voicemail line. Plenty of feedback that we got. Your calls, your texts, even a lot of mock drafts, right? A lot of folks took my advice and hit the PFF mock draft simulator, went down that rabbit hole, and I guarantee you didn't just do one mock draft, right? What did they say? What was it? Pringles, bet you can't eat just one. Mock drafts, bet you can't do just one, right? So many of you hit me with some feedback on that, so we'll get that. We'll get your calls and texts in segment number 3 as much as possible. Segment number 2, want to deep dive into another quarterback that easily could be on the Raiders' radar. We've talked about Cam Ward. We've talked about Shedeur Sanders. We've talked about Quinn Ewers. We've talked about others. We haven't deep dove into Jaxson Dart, so we'll go ahead and do that. I know our guy Raider Eddie in Denver had mentioned him along with Tyler Shook. So Ben Garrett, Ole Miss Spirit on 3.com. He was a part of my radio show and did a whole lot of talking about Jaxson Dart. Matter of fact, this was going back to last Friday when Ole Miss had their pro day, and we had him on immediately after that. And so I thought, you know what, that'd be some really good feedback, some really good research when it comes to QB number 3. And I think we all believe that that's QB number 3. The question is, where is he going to go in the draft? Top 15, top 10, 25, like what range does he go? Could he drop to round 2? I doubt it, but had a really good conversation with Ben Garrett, Ole Miss Spirit on 3.com. We talked about a lot of Ole Miss players, but we'll focus in here on just Jaxson Dart. So you hear that in segment number 2. Here in segment number 1, just news and notes of the day, including another mock draft, but not by me, not by you, but by Field Yates from ESPN. He's got a 2-round mock draft that he did, so I'll tell you what he said about the silver and black. But before we get to that, though, I do want to tell you about the title sponsor of the show, and that's Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, use promo code LOCKEDONNFL. It's all one word for $20 off your first purchase. So off top, I want to give a big RIP to the big John Vella, second-round pick in 72. The big offensive lineman, played 8 seasons at tackle and guard, 84 games, 48 starts, and a Super Bowl champ. A lot of folks, because I didn't get to see him play. I don't remember him playing like that. I do remember him. I do remember meeting him, but most people remember him like I remember him. He was the big offensive lineman that had his spot, right? The Raider locker room. Castro Valley, back in 87 is when he opened up the store. Fremont, Pleasant Hill, Milpitas, and as many people described to me, that's where I got my gear before there was the Raider image, before there was a lot of, outlets out there that had Raider gear to be had. Big John Vella, he had his stores, again, the Raider locker room. So the Raiders put out a message on Twitter and by their social media and also on Raiders.com, just giving a big RIP to him and the family. Passed away at the age of 74. The team announced that and did not give a cause for his death, but we definitely want to give a big RIP to Big John's family. And like I said, a lot of folks remember him from the Raider locker room, even going back to Castro Valley. I remember that. Also, on Wednesday, the contract details for linebacker Devin White were revealed. And I say that really slowly because a lot of people were kind of poo-pooing on the signing when it happened. And I mentioned that, well, it's a good 1-year prove-it deal. It's a good, if it's a good placeholder. If the Raiders go into the draft and get a linebacker or two and they feel like that they don't need Devin White, they could always move on from him. And the contract that he agreed to and signed shows exactly what I just said. 1 year, $1.03 million, no money guaranteed. Yeah, I said that. $0 guaranteed. And Devin White decided that was the spot for him to be with the silver and black. John Spytek, Tom Brady, obviously he's very familiar with them from their time in Tampa Bay together. And there you go. He's the latest Raiders linebacker. Again, doesn't mean that he's going to be playing for the Raiders in 2025. Nothing is set in stone. And that contract right there basically lets you know that that is the truth, right? I mean, he's a good placeholder for right now, just in case they're not able to get a linebacker in the draft or two linebackers in the draft that they really like, that they want to go and put out there on the field. Devin White could be that guy, but nothing is guaranteed, which tells you a lot. I got to give this staff a lot of credit for being able to put together a contract like that, especially it's only early April, right? To be able to do that at this stage of the game when the draft hasn't even happened yet, that's pretty impressive. So hats off to John Spytek and company for that kind of deal for linebacker Devin White. I saw a lot of people on social media on the Wednesday saying, hey, I like the Devin White deal even more now, right? Devin White, come on down. Great deal. Great deal. Remember, this guy was a former number 5 overall pick not that long ago, right? That's going back to 2019. Cleve Farrell went number 4. Devin White went number 5. I mentioned Field Yates and the fact that he's got another mock draft out. Mock draft, I believe it's 4.0. He's actually going to have a draft conference call today for ESPN. Excited about that, right? We've had Mel Kiper do his thing. We've had Mike Tannenbaum do his thing. Field Yates got his opportunity. So on ESPN.com right now, he's put out his latest mock draft. It's a 2-round mock draft. And for the Raiders is what I'm going to go ahead and break out for you. At number 6 overall, no surprise, Ashton Jeanty, running back, Boise State. He said the Raiders have a thin running back room. Raheem Mostert is listed atop the depth chart and will almost assuredly address the position in the draft. They averaged 3.6 yards per carry and 79.8 per game last season, both bottom of the league. New coach Pete Carroll has historically relied on the running game, so Jeanty is an easy match. I believe Jeanty has the best chance of any player in this class to be a Pro Bowler in year 1. His rare blend of power, contact, balance, explosion, and pass-catching ability can keep him on the field for any situation. He could post big numbers in Las Vegas after rushing for 2,601 yards in his final season at Boise State. So I don't think that was a big surprise when I said that he had Ashton Jeanty mocked at number 6 to the Raiders because, well, so many people do. And most likely that's probably going to end up being who the Raiders select at number 6. It just feels like all roads lead to Ashton Jeanty, and that's not a bad thing. It's not a bad thing for everything that Field Yates just mentioned. But got a little interesting when he got around to, well, round 2 when the Raiders made their next selection, except for they didn't make their next selection in round 2. He said projected trade, an AFC West deal. Wait, what? Let's keep the trades rolling. Yes, it's another one between two teams in the same division. New England jumping to number 30 to take Connerly. The Chiefs might look at the offensive tackle board and think they can get someone early on day 2 and improve one of their later round picks. The depth of this class aligns nicely with their biggest needs, and the Raiders might see a fit on offense that they can't let slip away. Full terms of the trade would include the Chiefs sending number 31 and a late 3rd rounder, number 95, to the Raiders for a 2nd rounder, number 37, and an early 3rd rounder, number 68. So AFC West division trade right there between the Chiefs and the Raiders, taking the Raiders out of round 2 and at the back end of round 1. So what do they do with number 31 overall, according to Field Yates? They draft Luther Burden III, wide receiver out of Missouri. We've had some conversations about him around this show for a while now. He's one of the wide receivers to keep an eye on. You know, obviously, Teteroa McMillan is one. Matthew Golden is another one. But Luther Burden III out of Missouri is a guy I remember just talking about on yesterday's show, how he didn't have a lot of great quarterback play this last year at Missouri, but he's a big-time player. He said, wide receiver is high on the Raiders' need list. The value wasn't there at number 6, as we instead went with Jeanty, but considering Jacoby Myers was the only Las Vegas receiver over 600 yards last season, it makes sense for the Raiders to surge back into the first round to take the extremely talented Burden. He was dominant in 2023 when he had 1,212 receiving yards, including 710 after the catch. He had a modest 2024 with 676 yards, but his explosiveness and power with the ball in his hands give him game-changing ability. So interesting stuff right there from Field Yates from ESPN. Ashton Jeanty, number 6 overall, and then Luther Burden III at number 31 as the Raiders make a trade with the Kansas City Chiefs to go get the wide receiver out of Missouri. But that's what I got for you for segment number 1 of today's Locked On Raiders podcast. Coming up in segment number 2, we deep dive into all things Jaxson Dart, the Ole Miss QB. I think everyone believes he's QB number 3, but how high will he go in the draft coming up at the end of April, starting on April 24th? Well, you hear that conversation that we had with Ben Garrett, Ole Miss Spirit on 3.com. You'll hear that next and get a little breakdown of the QB. We'll do it in segment number 2. Before I get to that, though, I do want to tell you about the title sponsor of the show, and that's Gametime. Imagine watching your favorite team live, feeling the energy of the crowd, and witnessing unforgettable moments. There's nothing like experiencing a big game in person. Getting tickets shouldn't be stressful. That's where Gametime comes in, making it easier than ever to grab last-minute seats at unbeatable prices. Gametime picks make it easier to find better value for tickets to sports, concerts, comedy, theater, you name it, they've got it. You can check the Gametime app. They've got amazing deals on some great matchups that are coming up, and then you don't want to miss. Plus, even better than that, they've got the lowest price guarantee, or Gametime will credit you 110% of the difference. With seat views before you buy, no surprise fees, and a lowest price guarantee, you can book with total confidence. So right now, take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, use promo code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. That's LOCKEDON NFL for $20 off. Locked On NFL, all one word. Download Gametime today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. What time is it? Game time? You guys thought I forgot about that, huh? Nah, my mama likes that. All right, Raider Nation, here we go. Segment number 2 of today's Locked On Raiders podcast. Want to deep dive into all things Ole Miss. Quarterback from Jaxson Dart. And this is, well, I want to give you a little bit of a preview first before you get into and hear the conversation I had with Ben Garrett, Ole Miss Spirit on 3.com, talking all things Jaxson Dart. This is from PFF and their 2025 draft guide. I was just able to download this on Wednesday, and pretty excited about it. I always love all these draft guides. When it's mock draft season, when it's draft season, it means it's draft guide season, and I collect them all. So the PFF one I like. I know a lot of people love PFF. I'm not a huge analytics guy. I really am not. I do a lot of the eye tests, but I respect everything that they stand for and what they say. And I know a lot of people, they kind of live by that. So I want to go ahead and give you the breakdowns on Jaxson Dart before you hear from Ben Garrett. So off top, they say he began his college career at USC, but transferred to Ole Miss after Lincoln Riley brought in Caleb Williams. He is a natural athlete, solid playmaker. Dart has earned an elite passing grade over the last 2 seasons. His playing style is enticing. He's light on his feet in the pocket, capable of slipping sacks, and possesses a decently quick release. His arm strength appears average by NFL standards. He's too comfortable throwing off his back foot, even when not under pressure. While his tape shows plenty of deep throws, his ball placement on those attempts leave more to be desired. He's experienced in throwing concept routes that put a single defender in conflict, like the slant flat, curl flat, smash, but lacks anticipation when making full field reads. His mobility is solid, and he's best suited for a shotgun-based system, having taken just 8 snaps under center over the last 2 seasons. So that's the initial write-up on Jaxson Dart, according to Pro Football Focus Trevor Sikkema. Strengths: natural poise, both in and out of structure. Feet are light, balanced, and ready to take off. Willingness to step up in the pocket, above average mobility and escapability. Weaknesses: average arm strength for the NFL level, deep ball accuracy and touch is lacking, eyes anticipation must improve, also no experience under center. Player comp, Kenny Pickett. This is not Q Myers speaking. This is PFF. I'm just reading right from what the write-up is in their 2025 draft guide. So not dismissing anyone, not throwing them to the side, not trying to downplay who they are. I like Jaxson Dart a lot. I'm just telling you what they're saying about him just to try to get you as much information as possible. So there's the write-up in PFF. Now, on to what Ben Garrett, Ole Miss Spirit on 3.com, who covers the guy each and every day for the last couple seasons, wanted to say about Jaxson Dart. And this is coming fresh off of their pro day that they had last Friday. So here's that conversation, just part of the conversation, talking all things Jaxson Dart with Ben Garrett from Ole Miss Spirit on 3.com. What can you tell us about the quarterback that is Jaxson Dart?
Record setter at Ole Miss, and even better off the field in terms of his leadership and what he meant to the program. Jaxson is just the best kind of leader that you would want, and somebody that you can rely on to come in and go to work and really be a culture changer in your locker room. I think today what we learned about Jaxson is that he's who he is in every situation. I mean, all odds are on him at pro day. Not many of the other guys or Ole Miss players that are expected to go in the top 2 rounds did any of the things that you're used to seeing at pro days, like 40s and vertical jumps and stuff like that. So really a lot of the attention was on Jaxson and his throwing, and I thought he had a really good showing. Met with the Saints afterwards, one-on-one with Kellen Moore and the New Orleans Saints. He said he's going to be attending the draft, so that tells you where he thinks this thing's kind of headed. And the Raiders are another top 30 visit that he's supposed to be taking as well, and the Pittsburgh Steelers. So he's a busy man right now, and I would argue probably the fastest rising draft prospect since Ole Miss's season came to a close, and for good reason. I mean, obviously the quarterback class isn't the same as other years maybe, or there's mixed reviews on the top prospects or the top players at that position in this draft, but Jackson's equipped himself well, and that's to be expected because, again, just tremendous player, yes, record-setting at Ole Miss, broke Eli Manning's records, and Eli Manning's, he's the Ole Miss of Ole Miss quarterbacks, and Jaxson set them all, and then off the field, beloved by his teammates, and it was a good final showing for him, and now it's just on to the draft in Green Bay, and I think he's going to have a good night. Again, he's attending the draft, and I expect him to go in the first round at this point.
Yeah, it clearly sounds like he expects to as well. If you're already committed to attending the draft, that's a big deal. And, Ben, are you surprised that he's a riser now as opposed to, just have been a first-round pick or a guy that everyone expected to be a first-round pick all along?
I think he's one that's always been on the quarterback, cut line, if you will, the quarterback first-round cut line, if you will. He's not going to jump off the page. He looks a lot like Jalen Hurts. He really does. I think he's got a little bit more deep ball accuracy than Jalen, but certainly not the runner Jalen is. But their games are very similar, and Jalen went in the top end of the second round. And but I think what's really helps Jaxson is he's going to test well, he's going to perform well, he's going to do well in the interviews. And in a draft class where there's not a consensus who's the obvious guy, maybe y'all think Cam Ward is that guy, but I think there's enough of a not that much of a separation between Cam and Jaxson to where he could make this climb, and his teams really try to invest in the most important position in football. You get Jaxson Dart into a room. It's hard not to really fall in love with him as what he could be as a prospect, because he's ready-made. He's going to come in. He can play immediately. Ideally, he comes into a situation where he can learn a little bit. With the Raiders, it's interesting because they just got Geno, and that's probably a 2-3 year commitment. Maybe that takes Jaxson off the board with the Raiders, but again, he's visiting them for a top 30 visit, and if he has to wait, he's adept and equipped to do that as well. And because he's going to be a good culture guy, he's going to be a good locker room guy. He's not going to be one of those pouting kind of guys. He just wants to come in and be the best version of himself. Like he told me today, I don't care where I get drafted, because for me the aspiration is not to just get drafted. It's all the best possible things that quarterbacks pursue when they're going to the NFL. So he's got his sights set on the greatest of great, and that's what you want to hear come from, again, the premium position in football, quarterback, and probably, in my opinion, at worst, the number 3 in this draft class in Jaxson Dart.
How much have you seen Lane Kiffin's offense and Lane Kiffin in general, saying he's a coach that's been in the National Football League, obviously been in multiple colleges, just kind of equip Jaxson for his journey to the league?
Well, there's very few programs in the country that are run quite like a professional football team like Ole Miss. If you came, you wouldn't really be able to tell the difference in the practices and OTAs. And Lane does that by design. A lot of that is because, these guys it's a different world with the portal, and you're so much turnover every single year, and new faces, and it has to be process-oriented. But even more than that, it prepares them, and it's turned Ole Miss into that next-level destination because they do treat you like a pro. They are here to get you to this next level. And and Jaxson Dart's a perfect example of that. Lane's offense gets a rap as like a pass-happy, no under center kind of stuff. Jaxson can do all those things. He can go under center. He can do what's required of him. Lane's offense really is what you're seeing across the board in the NFL these days. It's more in line with traditional NFL offenses than what we're used to seeing. So I think Jaxson, the verbiage will be a little bit more complicated maybe, or there might be more of it. But these are all concepts and stylistic things that Jaxson has been running for 3 years because Lane designed it that way, both in the structure of his program and how his offense is ran. He wants them to be as professionally developed as they possibly can be. And I think Jackson's ready. There was some talk. He wanted to kind of come out last year, but it's too early. It was smart for him to come back because I think, last year he wasn't ready. This year he's a different quarterback in terms of his readiness for the NFL, his ability to step in if he has to and start. I think he's certainly in a better spot than he's ever been before. And again, no one deserves the process that he's gotten to this point quite like Jaxson because, again, you knew he was going to test well and he was going to interview well, but he deserves it because he put in a lot to pour a lot of himself into Ole Miss, and now that hard work is getting rewarded in an individual way through this NFL draft process. So it's just a tremendous story and a great story for him. Ole Miss last year only had like 3 dudes drafted. This year, they're going to have double digits, and this is kind of like the new normal for them. And Jaxson Dart's going to be right up there potentially as one of those first rounders. I think it's again trending that way, and today was just another step in that process.
Ben, you said something that really intrigued me, and that was he needed to come back. He needed another year at Ole Miss. How much did you see his game grow from what you saw last year to this year?
Well, it's just having a complete conviction of purpose and knowing what you're doing and having, there's a question about his deep ball accuracy, after last year. This year he comes back and he's one of the very best deep ball passers in all of football. Those kind of things, those kind of questions that you had to answer where he's always been a mature kid as far as like taking over a team and being a team leader. He was always ready for that. But there were some questions that he had to answer, and I think he really answered them better than any player in the SEC, quite frankly, especially at his position. I mean, he's the only quarterback with 90-plus grades in each of the past 2 seasons, the only quarterback in college football, according to Pro Football Focus. But this year, where the difference was is in that deep ball accuracy, in that complete mastery of who he was, what his role was in this offense, and his role in it. So, he just wasn't quite there, I think, as far as what all scouts and GMs and coaches look for on the film. And now that film, it just pops at you, right? I mean, the things that you questioned him on, it's hard to find make a case against picking Jaxson Dart now, especially, again, considering what the draft class is. So, I think he just wasn't quite ready at that point as far as physically and the demands of the position or what he wanted to be at this level. But now I very well could see him getting on the field very, very early, wherever he lands, and being good almost immediately. The only question with Jaxson is what's the upside? What's the true upside? Is he kind of what he is, or is there more to unlock there? And I think that's the debate that's being had now. But as far as a ready-made prospect, there are a few, especially at his position, that are more ready-made to go to the NFL now than Jaxson.
So a lot of high praise, and I love to talk to the people that are there on the daily, because somebody could be watching film, somebody could be taking notes like a PFF, like Trevor Sycamore or others, and say, this is good, this is good, this is bad, this is what I see on film. But it's another thing to be at the games on the regular, right? I experienced it myself as I was covering Baylor for a long time and covering the Big 12, getting to see a lot of these players. I knew what they can do, and I know what they did in game situations, as opposed to just, kind of looking at film and taking notes and, giving a guy credit here or giving a guy not credit here. Just the game situation to me, and that's why I take PFF. I respect it. I really do. It's kind of they give you their opinion, which I appreciate. But then at the same time, I also like to go off the eye test, and I believe a lot of people do the same thing. So I thought that would be a nice little deep dive into Jaxson Dart, because as we've talked about many times, we know there's Cam Ward, we know there's Shedeur Sanders, and then there's Jaxson Dart. And I don't think that we know where Jaxson Dart's going to go. He's been mocked as high as number 9 overall to the Saints by Mel Kiper Jr., seen him as low as 21, 25, even the very beginning of round 2, which I don't think he'll be there for that. But again, maybe he's in that range, so if the Raiders are interested, they can make a move. Like Field Yates said, that they moved up to go get Luther Burden at the back end of round 1. They probably could easily do the same thing, make a move from round 2 to the back end of round 1 and get Jaxson Dart if they so choose to, and if he's available. Coming up in segment number 3, your calls and texts, 707-654-4693. We'll hear from you next here on the Locked On Raiders podcast. Here we go, Raider Nation. Segment number 3 of today's Locked On Raiders podcast. Your calls and texts draft that Locked On Raider podcast voicemail line, 707-654-4693. Let's start things off with Raider Noah in the 801. He's calling to replace the call that he actually made on Tuesday that didn't make the show, but he had a really good thought on the draft and what he thinks the Raiders need to do for sure. Here he is, Raider Noah in the 801.
Q! It's Raider Noah in the 801. I was calling to go against my other call that I made, because for some reason or another, the day that I want to talk about relevant news, you're talking about relevant news. I was talking about Ashton Genty. I was talking about John Spytek with his son on Sirius XM, and you covered it all before I even got to my phone call, man. What the heck's up with that? No, I'm just playing. First-time caller, long-time listener. Just wanted to get my thoughts out there, man. I really, really, really think we need to go ahead and and take our shot and get ourselves a quarterback this draft. I don't know if it's going to be Shedeur. I don't know if it's going to be Jaxson or Quinn. I don't know who it is. I just want somebody to compete, man. We need some sort of long-term answer. I have been a Raider fan for over 10 years. About 12 years, 13 years now. I've been a fan since about 2012. I'm only 23 years old. I've got a lot of life left in me, man. And all I've seen growing up is the Raiders not performing to what I know they can be. Seeing all the old footage of the 80s Raiders and how they played, how Al Davis ran the team, we have the potential to be successful. I think we just need to start making serious decisions. We need to start coming up with a game plan, and Pete Carroll has already started doing that. I think we have a real chance here. We keep getting into this cycle of, all right, let's get better in the offseason. We're getting better on paper. Now we're coming back to the regular season, and it just falls. And it's just been on repeat. It's been on loop, my friend. I want us to be great. I want to show my mother, who is a Kansas City Chiefs fan, that we've got what it takes. So tired of going to the Thanksgiving table and sitting there talking about how, oh, Patrick Mahomes is the greatest thing ever. No, it's not. No, he isn't. He is great. But we can be better. I know we can. Let's shoot for the stars. Let's get it done. I hope you have a good rest of your day, Q. Raider Nation.
Noah, thanks so much for the call. I love the spirit, my man, and I agree with you 100%, right? That a quarterback needs to be drafted this year. It doesn't have to be a 6. It doesn't have to be in round 2, but they need to get in the habit of drafting signal callers until they get it right? I mean, that's just the reality of it. They need to do that. I think the good organizations do that. I've been saying that for a while. Don't get comfortable with just one guy. Right now, if you have, your franchise dude like Patrick Mahomes, you don't have to go and get a guy immediately. Like, I get that. But it's not a bad thing. It's not a bad habit to get into, going and drafting quarterbacks year after year after year. Again, you can get them in the 4th, 5th, 6th round, whatever the case may be. The one thing we know, just like we're hearing out of New England, that teams are calling for Joe Milton. He hasn't done anything in the league that mattered, right? He's done stuff in preseason games, right? But they're calling because they're interested in him because he's a capable quarterback, and the league needs capable quarterbacks. So you can always flip them if you all of a sudden end up with some kind of a logjam. And as far as the playoffs go and having a big time season, I agree with you. Raider Nation needs to get the payoff. Raider Nation is there all the time. I say it. The only people who get affected by new staffs, turnaround, rebuilds, this, that, and the other are the fans. Raider Nation, because you're the one that's there all the time. Blood, sweat, tears, right? Money spent, going to the games, cutting for the team, and not to get the reward, that always stinks. So, hey, I'm right there with you, and I'd love to see Raider Nation get rewarded for all their years of loyalty. So thanks for the call, my man. Appreciate you. Thanks for being a first-time, I guess second-time caller, but first-time making the show. Please don't make that your last, man. Really good stuff. I do appreciate that. Up next, got a text from Raider Samp. That's Raider Samp from the PNW. Said Will Johnson would be a home run first-round pick. Go watch the 2023 film. His instincts are off the charts. Maybe Michigan's bad 2024, and the fact that he's waiting for a big payday led to some business decisions this year, but he's a stud corner that the Raiders need. That's Raider Samp from the PNW. You're not wrong. I know he's a fantastic player. I absolutely know he's a fantastic player, and I'm a guy that always talks about DBs and chasing DBs and make sure you go get a guy or get a couple guys here and there, and for some reason, I just didn't have him high on my priority list until Adam Rank mentioned, Will Johnson. I thought, that's a good point, especially with Pete Carroll, right? He's a secondary type guy, right? I mean, that's the position he plays, that's the position he coaches. I mean, that's who he is. It makes all the sense in the world. I guess because the Raiders are picking at number 6, I didn't have him in that, in that range right there. But they very well easily could get him with their first pick. And a lot of people, like I mentioned before, have been interested in the Raiders trading back. If there's a trade back opportunity, maybe that's the guy that you target right there. Maybe you get him at like 9 or 10. That would not be a bad thing at all because he's a fantastic player. You're right about that. Thanks so much for that text. I appreciate you. Up next, got a call from Jeff in the 503. He's repping that Portland, calling to talk about his excitement for the upcoming draft, the team in general. He really has a lot of excitement in this call, period. Here he is, Jeff in the 503.
Hey, this is Jeff over in 503. I just want to say thank you for all the work you guys do. I appreciate you. I listen to you every day. I wanted to also talk about the draft this year. I'm really excited about this draft because other than last year, we kind of had pretty dismal picks, and I think that picking at 6, there's plenty of talent available to us to get us a game changer and maybe a blue chip player like a Mason Graham. I'm also excited that we got Geno. We don't have to reach for a quarterback in the first round. This draft is not very good when it comes to quarterbacks. I don't even think Sanders makes it into the first round without his father's name. or in another draft with better quarterbacks. I'm hoping that we get who we want and he becomes a day one starter. I'm excited for this team, what's coming with Pete Carroll. I think that was smooth, and also picking up Spytek and Chip Kelly. I'm really excited. I like Gentry. I think if we need to grab him in the first, we need to do that. Maybe come back in the second and grab a quarterback like a Jaxson Dart or somebody else. I'm not too concerned about the wide receiver position if we get Gentry. And I think we could have used him last year because of the fact that we didn't have a great quarterback in Aiden O'Connell or Gardner Minshew. So I'm just excited. Whether we take an offensive tackle or we go for a defensive tackle, there's just so much talent available to us. We know that Cam Ward's probably going to go first, so that frees up quite a few picks for us to take somebody else at 6 or even trade back a couple picks, knowing that we have enough players left that we would select. So anyways, I'm looking forward to the draft. Everybody have a great day. Raider Nation for life.
Jeff, thanks for the call. Appreciate you. And I think you hit it on the head, right? The acquisition of Geno Smith, the Raiders don't have to force an issue with the quarterback. And what I mean by an issue is force a trade to go get your quarterback, right? And when they failed to land Matt Stafford, that's what I thought they had to do. I was at the combine and said, hey, now that they didn't get Matt Stafford, just do everything you got to do. Go move up, go get your quarterback, and call it a day. Right, you need a quarterback. But then they were able to pull off the Geno Smith trade. It's like, okay, wait a minute. Now they don't have to do that. Now they don't have to get desperate. Now they don't have to act like the Pittsburgh Steelers, right? Sitting by the phone at home, waiting for the hot girl to call them, right? Yeah, she said she's gonna call me today and let me know about the prom. She said she's gonna call me today. Get away from the phone. Get away from the phone. No, nobody answer it. I got this when it calls. Still waiting. What's that cartoon? 2 hours later, still waiting, right? I mean, it's just, that's what they're doing right now. They're having that desperate moment. The Raiders don't have to do that. They have Geno Smith. They can address the quarterback anywhere they want. They can do it as early as 6 if they want to. They can wait till the 3rd round. They can wait till the 4th round. Doesn't really matter, right? They're in a really good position. And if they choose to go, offensive lineman, running back, cornerback, defensive tackle, right? Whatever, wide receiver if they want to, like whatever they want to do at 6, they have the flexibility of doing it, and they don't have to trade. Joe Fortenbaugh, my partner on Joe and Q on ESPN Radio, he told me, so, well, what do you think the Raiders will do if Shador gets to number 4 or gets to number 5? Yeah, he said number 5. Do you think that they'd be interested in trading up to go get him? I said, no. Why? Like, I think that they would be interested if he falls to 6. Right, but I don't think they have to trade up. They traded to get Geno Smith. They gave up draft capital to get Geno Smith. Why trade up to get another quarterback? You could just sit there and wait, and if he falls, he falls. If another team like the Jets happens to leapfrog the Raiders for Shador, okay, that's fine. You still have Geno Smith. You're good, right? And you can get another quarterback like we heard about Jaxson Dart. In segment number 2, maybe you get a Jaxson Dart a little bit later, or whatever the case may be. You don't have to force the issue right now. That's the beautiful thing. As far as Sanders goes, you question where he'd be drafted. He's for the most part, everyone says if you look at like last year's draft with the quarterbacks, 6 win in the top 12, he'd probably be anywhere between like the 4 and 6 range. So he's obviously behind Caleb. He's obviously behind Jaden, and he's obviously behind Drake. He'd be in the Penix, Nix, J.J. McCarthy range, somewhere around there. So, anywhere from, 12 to 17, which is not bad, right? It's still the first half of the first round. No, is it number 2 overall? Is it number 6 overall? No, but he's still, midway through the first round. That's basically what the consensus would be if you were looking at where he is right now compared to where he'd be last year with the draft with all the quarterbacks that were there. So again, it is what it is. Genty, big time difference maker, right? I mean, we talked about it in great length on yesterday's show, but if for no other reason, the Raiders' leading rusher last year had about 450 yards on the ground in Alexander Madison. Zamir White, who he thought was going to be the lead dog, had less than 200 yards, right? Like Field Yates said when he in his mock draft when he had Ashton Genty, the Raiders averaged 3.6 yards per carry and 79.8 per game. It's just not enough, right? That's just not enough. I mean, they need to be right up there around 100-something yards per game for sure. 79.8 is all bad. And that's probably inflated by a couple games that they actually did pretty decent on the ground. So thanks so much for the call. Definitely appreciate you. Up next, got a text from Raider T in Boise. He said, hey, Q, your show's always great. Thanks for putting it out there and putting it together for us. I've been a diehard Raider fan since '88. I'm also a Boise State University alum and fan. I watched Ashton Jeanty play every game, and the best comparison to him is playing Bo Jackson on Nintendo's Tecmo Bowl. He got the it factor. I don't think it would be wise to pass on him. It's also the perfect union between my two favorite teams. Maybe he'll get more Raider games shown locally, too. Jeanty will bring a weekly wow play to our game. Go Raiders. That's from Raider T in Boise. Hey, good stuff, right? And when I did a deep dive on Jeanty, when we covered Boise State's pro day, it's funny they were talking about, the reporter was talking about that, there'd be a lot more Raider fans that are coming from Boise State, right, or coming from Boise in general, right, just because he's such a polarizing figure and so well loved in that community. And I mean, the one thing I know about that dude, just from talking to him personally, is he is a great stand-up, well-disciplined, well-liked, just leader. Great dude. He is that guy. And I know everyone's not a big fan of the word dude, but he's a dude, right? In every sense of the word. And it's just what he is. I would back that up 1,000 times. Just like I said, just from the conversations I've had with him. And they haven't been a lot, but they've been enough to know who he is as a person and who he is as a player on the field and a leader for a team. So thanks so much for that text. I do appreciate you. And let's see. That's about all I got time for. I got a call from Jordan in Oregon. Got a text from 360 Raider. Actually hit us with a PFF mock draft. We'll get that tomorrow. Raider Izzy gave us a call. We got a text from Back in Black 70 in the 509. That's a heck of a name right there. We'll get that tomorrow. Also, as I mentioned, Field Yates, he has his draft conference call. He's got Mock Draft 4.0 out right now, ESPN.com. Bring you some of the sounds of what he's got to say about not only Ashton Jeanty to the Raiders, but also just some other prospects as well. Trying to give you as much information and as much knowledge as we could possibly give you as we continue to roll on throughout the course of the draft season, with round 1 coming up April 24th in Green Bay. So until tomorrow, Raider Nation, take care of yourself, take care of your family, love on your family. Most importantly, as always, just win, baby.